What's up, y'all? Bud Elliott here, and this is the Noelcast. It's about 10 o'clock here on the East Coast. Appreciate everybody tapping in. Make sure you give us those nice 5-star reviews on iTunes, Apple Podcast, and also make sure that you give us the thumbs up on YouTube. I apologize for looking down at my phone, and I had a guy text me here. I'll get into this a little bit more, just some more details of things. Got blasted for saying this thing today on cover 3. But yes, FSU, Texas, and Oregon all have way better NIL than Alabama. Sorry. Okay, so tap in. Make sure you guys hit that nice thumbs up. All right, so a couple things here. Number one, obviously, y'all want to hear about the Alabama job search, Mike Norvell being named as a candidate by a lot of media reports. And obviously, I think Mike Norvell is a hell of a ball coach. So it makes sense that he won, 23 games in the last 2 years. And it makes a lot of sense that they would. So Graham will join me in the morning to discuss that and also a lot of the top transfers that FSU has brought in. I wanted to do a joint episode, and then I wanted to make sure we got something out tonight on the NCAA thing. So, all right, look, just real quick to kind of put your fears at ease. Mike Norvell is a hell of a ball coach, okay? But I don't think he's shown to be like an irreplaceable coach because he's not a hell of a ball coach who's also a hell of a recruiter. He's just a hell of a ball coach so far. He might eventually become a good recruiter or a guy who can fill out a staff that has the right balance of coach and recruiting. But right now, he's more in that kind of like Lance Leipold, Chris Kleiman mold where it's more about the coaching than it is the recruiting. We'll see how that changes and how that plays in terms of the courtship by Alabama, if he's even the top guy. We'll see if he is. But that's not an irreplaceable formula. Florida State has gone undefeated 3 times in the last quarter century with 3 different coaches. You're in a league where you basically roll out of bed and win 5 or 6 games automatically if you do a decent job at all, because some of the people you compete against only have, NIL budgets of like $500,000 or $750,000 or $1 million, which is, exponentially less than what you play with. So, do I think Mike Norvell is going to Alabama? I don't know. It makes sense that he's a candidate, but they also looks like they struck out on the top guy, Dan Lanning, who would make a lot of sense because we know he can recruit at that level, and he's been in the Saban system. I'll star a couple of your questions to go through them throughout the show. This is probably a 20 or 25-minute show, I would think. Let me see here. Sorry. Just making sure. Cool. By the way, I want to say the main part of the show is brought to you by the legendary team. Chad does such a tremendous job. 844 FSU Loan gets you the best possible loan that you guys can get. I've used them twice. I think they do a great job. 844 FSU Loan is the number to call. The link is also in the show notes if you want. So if you're watching this, you're probably familiar. But again, every podcast is someone's first, so I will go through it. Florida State, it was announced tonight. Well, not announced, but the story broke by Yahoo and I believe also Sports Illustrated. So a couple of reporters who were out at the NCAA convention that Florida State and the NCAA have agreed to some penalties for some recruiting infractions. Let's go through these. So this relates back to the Amarius Mims situation in the spring of 2022. If you recall, Amarius Mims, stud left tackle, jumped in the portal. He's from Georgia. He visited Florida State. The allegations, which I think at this point are agreed to, certainly the penalties are agreed to. I don't know if FSU actually agreed to the allegations, but what's in the Yahoo story, and I'll give Dellinger credit because I think he's probably the best one covering this, was that a coach, and Atkins is named in the story, drove Amarius Mims to meet with a representative of the collective at the time, Rising Spear, not Battle's End, so not the collective that Graham runs, as was pointed out by a lot of reporters tonight. I think that's obviously important. And they agreed on a deal, again, this is the Yahoo story, of roughly $15,000 a month, which I will tell you, is extremely cheap, by the way, by today's standards to get a stud left tackle. But anyway, technically that's a violation. I can't tell you how many coaches from other schools and other like media who texted me that like, wait, where's the violation here? Like that's just sort of the normal course of business, and that's how things are done. But technically, it's against the rules. So Florida State negotiated, and they got a level 2 violation, not a level 1. I'm not an NCAA legal expert, but I will say that people will probably ask, why would they agree to these penalties? It's probably just to get the case over and done with, to get the investigation over and done with, and to be like, okay, it's a level 2. It's not a level 1. The penalties do not impact the head coach. They just impact the assistant coach, Alex Atkins. In this case, he'll be suspended for 3 games, and he has a 2-year show cause, which means he can't. If he gets hired somewhere else, they would have to, the school would have to show cause for why they are making that hire. Again, a show cause is essentially like a 2-year pseudo ban on being hired elsewhere. So, stinks for Alex Atkins, obviously, but that is just kind of the price of doing business if you want to win football games. So, not going to beat around the bush on that, right? So it's a level 2, not a level 1. That's pretty important. They get a 2-year probation. Probation means exactly that. Probationary period. Like just don't do other bad things, essentially, guys. It's not a bowl ban. It's not a playoff ban. None of that kind of stuff at all. So just to clarify, probation just means you're on probation. Just, sort of you do other things, penalties could escalate. There are a lot of schools on probation basically at all times. It's just sort of kind of a rolling thing. Florida State has been on probation before. I don't really know of a team that hasn't. Maybe the Irish. I'd have to check on that. But I think almost all schools have been on probation at some time. Doesn't mean it's a good thing to be on probation. But the main thing I wanted to clarify here is that probation does not mean a bowl ban, and it does not mean any sort of additional penalty. They also will lose 5 scholarships over the next 2 years. That's not nothing, but it's not a crippling penalty, certainly. So, not ideal. But again, it sort of like every additional one matters more. Like if you lose 15, it's a tremendous penalty. 5 is not something that is really going to cripple a program. You lost some visits and evaluation days. They actually served that penalty, most of it at least, already this fall. So, I think some of the coaches, probably including Atkins, couldn't go on the road at certain times this fall. Not a big deal there. So why did it come out now? That's a good question. I will tell you that the NCAA in these cases works extremely slow. So it would not surprise me if Florida State has been negotiating with the NCAA on this, kind of going back and forth. Do you agree? Do you want to take it to, to infractions? Do you want to sue over it? It would not shock me if they have been going at this for maybe a year. Who knows? So it comes out now. I would say it's probably better that it comes out after signing day and after move-in day. If I'm Florida State, that's what I would have been doing. Like trying to not get it to come out, right around signing day. So, yeah, you can kind of read into the timing on that. I don't really think that it has anything to do with the timing of the story breaking. I don't truly think it has something to do with the courtship of Norvell, allegedly or reportedly by Alabama. You could sort of argue that both ways. Because Norvell didn't have any penalties, that maybe could help him. Because you kind of learn some stuff about recruiting, maybe if you're Alabama, it makes you look at Norvell with a little bit more of a skeptical eye for his ability as a recruiter. So I'll take some questions here from the chat. All right, Michael says, do you think this stuff with the NCAA is retaliation in any way? I do not. No, not really. I think they were trying to set an example in some pounds of flesh. If you read the Dellinger story, it says that Florida State was the first, but they will not be the last, and that it seems like some more serious stuff is coming down the pipe for other schools. I will quote from Dellinger. Where we go. Mark Hicks, the NCAA Enforcement Managing Director for Development, told a group of administrators that the association is focused on, quote, tampering and inducements related to NIL, and that they have proof that recruiting rules are being violated. The NCAA has screenshots of text messages from sitting head coaches sent directly to players on other college teams in attempts to get them to transfer schools. Coaches are as well reaching out to the high school coaches of college players as intermediaries. Of course they are. Like, that's just basically how this game is played. So, yeah, that's what we're dealing with here. I would say that it's not nothing, but it's nothing that makes me think like, hey, Florida State's in trouble for this at all, personally. If you got like multiple level ones, like Michigan might be facing for Harbaugh stuff, that's when they can really kind of get you. Level 2 stuff and the fact that they got it done and out of the way, I think ultimately is kind of what you want here. So a couple more questions. Let's just take a look through this. This won't be a super long show this evening, but I did just kind of want to give you all my opinion on it. All right. So Traveling Snowman asks, I read the Athletic article, but I still don't understand what exactly Atkins or the booster did wrong. So technically, you're not supposed to facilitate deals if a player isn't signed with you already, because that's technically an inducement. Obviously, if you read some of the articles that the kids gave interviews with at the Under Armour and All-American games recently, they talked about how they would not sign until their agent reviewed the deal. In some cases, like with an Ohio State, or the one kid said he was offered $3 million a year, which I did confirm today is completely nonsense. That school did not offer that, although they did offer him a pretty good number. So, yeah, I guess because if you give the kid a ride, you're facilitating the inducement. That's sort of where they're. I don't guess that's basically what they would allege there. All right. But how did they find out about the dollar amount? Did the kid tell on FSU? Well, I doubt FSU told on itself. So most likely, I would say that is probably how that would happen. All right. Grill Master says, does that explain some of the stuff about the high school recruiting this past cycle? I would say pretty little, to be honest. I think it's more of an imbalance on this staff between the quality of coaching, which I do believe is pretty high at most positions, and the quality of recruiting, which I think is too low in several spots, and that there's an imbalance. And, it's why I was pretty, I wasn't shocked because somebody told me all the coaches were getting extended, but I was certainly a little bit like, okay, really? As my attitude. But it's hard to fire your guys when you go 13-0. But at some point, the bill will come due for all the misses they keep having at linebacker and along the defensive line. It's unavoidable. All right. Let me see here. What else? What other questions do we have from the show? Jordan asks, what does this mean about the playoff chances in 2024? Absolutely nothing. This will not impact Florida State's playoff chances in any way. You have a team that should roll out of bed and win like the 6 automatic games, unless something crazy happens. And I was texting with a friend today, and I said, hey, honestly, assuming reasonable health and the worst possible bounces, you're like, if you just got terrible bounces and bounce luck, like 8-4, but this team is probably somewhere between 7-5 and 12-0, and 12-0 is not an off the table type result. So will Florida State be a worse team this year than it was last year? Certainly it will be. It is not as talented. It is not as experienced. And also, I think in some cases, especially on defense, your best players are not your best leaders. And last year, in many cases, they were. So I think that's a bit of a problem as far as overall leadership from a player-led team standpoint. But you absolutely still have a chance to make the playoff and to win the ACC next year. Going through some more questions here. I do want to tell you about our friends at Congruity HR Solutions. Matt Lewis does a tremendous job. A lot of Nolecast listeners have paired up with Matt to make their business optimize, whether it's payroll, HR solutions. Hit the link in the show notes. congruityhr.com/Knowles is what you want to do. You'll get hooked up with Matt. Matt does such a tremendous job for all of us, and we are a proud user of Congruity here on the Nolecast. I know the Battle's End is also involved with them. Again, Battle's End, not the collective that was implicated here for this, just to be clear. Scrolling through some more of these questions. Grillmaster says, hey, if you think these weren't bad sanctions for the violations, do you think the other programs are about to get absolutely destroyed? Well, I don't know. So if your program's about to get absolutely destroyed, you might sue over it, right? This is not an absolutely destroyed type thing. It kind of stinks, but it's also not something that is crippling. You're not losing a head coach. You're not losing. You're losing Atkins for 3 games, and that's not nothing. I think Atkins is a good coach, but also it's 5 scholarships, and you lose your OC for 3 games. In related news, Michigan just won the national title and had their head coach suspended for half of the season. So, yeah, about that. There are some other additional little, like, real small penalties as well. I didn't want to get into kind of the nitty gritty of that. All right. So, Keith Gordon says, we've dealt with a lot of people in our team or program in recent months and years. We've dealt with Coach Norvell leaving would be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Yeah, I have a ton of respect for Mike Norvell. I think he does a tremendous job getting the team prepared, coaching, culture, but he's not an irreplaceable coach because he's not shown that recruiting element. If Norvell recruited at a high level, I'd be right there with you, buddy, because then that's a true unicorn. But if he did, he'd be the first call that Alabama made, not to Dan Lanning, who has shown the ability to recruit at a really high level. Just saying, like, Norvell's a hell of a coach. I do think there are a lot of hell of a coaches out there as well, and Florida State's a place where if you're a good coach, you will win, and you will win quite a bit. All right. Keith thinks it'll be a decade if Norvell were to leave before they get back to this point. I don't agree with that at all. So I don't see that personally. No, absolutely not on board with Prime coming to Florida State. If I was Michael Alford, I would institute a rule that you have to at least know the offer, or you need to know the rules of overtime before we hire you. And it's pretty clear that Dion doesn't know how the overtime rules work because he took the ball first in overtime 2 games this year. So that would be crazy. We'll punt on a lot of these Norvell questions as far as leaving type thing, because again, I don't know that Mike Norvell's leaving. I don't know that he's the top choice. Clearly, he was not the top original choice. I think with all the Lanning stuff that went on. And we'll talk a little more about this NCAA situation. If anybody has questions about it, I will. Let me see what we have here. If I had to make a prediction, who winds up as the Alabama coach? Today I went DeBoer slightly over Norvell when I was on the Barstool show with Rico Bosco. I don't know if you guys watched that or not. It was a good time. Let me see here. If Mike were to leave, who's your top 3 candidates? I think there's so many good ones, and it's a different situation than what Alabama is, because Alabama, you have like such pressure to get it perfect because you're following like the best coach of all time, and you have so many more difficulties there, including the fact that, like, I don't think their collective is anywhere near what FSU's is. And I know people don't want to agree or don't want to believe that, but you can ask around. Sorry, got to text this guy back. All right. So, looking for more questions here. Anyway, yeah. Probation, so don't do anything silly over the next 2 years. 5 scholarships. Does it hurt? Kind of, but again, it's not like you're recruiting at a crazy high level to where you're having to find space for guys because you're not doing so. Let me see what else here. We will do a deeper dive tomorrow morning, probably go about 9, maybe 9:15ish, whatever time we decide to go live on these transfers and what we like about them. I will say that I like the variety that FSU got on the defensive line. So getting the D lineman from Oregon State, I think, is an important player because he has a certain high floor of stability. Getting Gilbert Edmond last year was a good get. Now, he didn't play very well, and it didn't work out for you, but he had shown some good ability at South Carolina at times. Your Oregon State guy is better in terms of on a down-and-down basis. Now, he's not a crazy high impact player, but it's almost like getting a professional to come play for you. And as a baseball analogy, like finding a right fielder who can hit 270, couple home runs, play good defense. He played damn near 500 snaps for Oregon State. So I like that. And then you throw in Marvin Jones Jr. and you throw in your West Virginia kid. Like the West Virginia guy, I like him as far as the splash plays. But the bad plays are basically unplayable. Like they're really, really bad. So you have the stability of Oregon State. You have Pat Payton coming back. He announced his partnership with the Battle's End again, right? You have Marvin Jones Jr. You have you have a lot of different variety of bodies here. So I do like what they're doing there on the defensive line after how damn bad they've been recruiting the defensive line. And I'm not trying to bang on that to be negative, but like I said, the bill will come due for how poorly they have recruited the front seven at the high school level. R. Wilmer wants to know, hey, can you explain the 2-year penalty against Alex not understanding the impact? So that is the 2-year show cause penalty is more of a personal penalty for Alex Atkins, right? It basically hurts his ability to advance as in his career because he can't get hired away for 2 years unless somebody were to show cause. Now, there are some examples of teams that have hired a guy with a show cause, but it is kind of risky because the NCAA could be like, yeah, that's not a true valid reason for hiring this guy, so you can't hire him. He's suspended. So assuming Mike Norvell stays in Tallahassee, which, again, if I had to make a guess at it, I actually do think FSU will hold on to Norvell, but I in any case, I am strongly of the belief that if they don't, that they will get another really damn good coach because they're pretty damn pot committed right now as far as money stuff goes. You don't sue the ACC to leave and then screw around when it comes to the commitment to the quality of football. So if Norvell leaves, I'm very confident they're going to have, close to 8 figures a year for somebody. I think that they would be extremely committed. But assuming Norvell stays, I think there's an excellent chance that Alex Atkins is your coordinator through the end of 2025 because of the show cause penalties. So that is kind of the practical impact of it. Let me see here. If Atkins were to leave, do you get the 5 scholarships back? No. So that part is more of a school penalty. These are actually really good questions. So I appreciate that. How big of a blow is the dissociation with Rising Spear for a year? Look, I'm not intending to create enemies, so I won't. I don't think it's a huge blow to the school. If you look at it, for the most part, I think almost all of the partnerships announced by players have been with Battle's End and not with Rising Spear. So we will see. But it stinks for those guys, obviously. And I retweeted some people I know, like Football Scoop, which is a site that talks to coaches for a living and kind of relays their thoughts. It's they basically said, like, wait, like, doesn't every school do this? And I'll read you a conversation from a guy who's not at Florida State, if you'd like. And I think it's pretty interesting. It's a GM at at a different school, by the way. Let me take this question down. All right. Him. Wait, FSU got popped for an NIL guy meeting with an official visitor? ... Question mark. WTF? 2 years ago, the Amarius Mims thing? I said, yeah, the Georgia tackle transfer. He said, yeah, he's a dude. But doesn't everyone do that? This is so dumb. I said, yeah, it was just kind of a pretty public situation, made it kind of easy. He said, maybe it was before it was truly commonplace. I said, yeah. Again, he's at a fairly major school. So is it not Barton? No, I don't want to get Barton in trouble. That is not Barton. If you saw the McMurphy tweet, which was pretty funny, that he was kind of mean to Vanderbilt. McMurphy was like, man, everybody cheats except Vanderbilt, which is kind of funny. Let me see here. What else do we have? Other questions about the NCAA thing, if you want to. I think those are pretty much. I'm not going to get into the motivations of why a kid would quote unquote snitch on a school. I'm not going to get into like if certain outlets, proclaiming the commit earlier or not. I don't. I'm just not going to do that, guys. If you want to argue amongst yourselves in the comment section, that's fine. Question in 2022: didn't everyone report the lack of understanding and rules of the new NIL era? If so, why is the NCAA not sued, fined for lack of guidance, rules, and regulations? All right, so check this out. You don't agree to this unless you think that not agreeing to it would be worse. Does that make sense? If you think you can fight it and win, Florida State fights stuff quite a bit, by the way. Like they're literally in a $500 million lawsuit against the ACC right now. So my read on this is that they clearly didn't think they had leverage in this situation for whatever reason and decided to take the penalty. I'm going to defer to FSU on this, that is probably the right call to take the plea deal. I don't know how long the negotiation went on. I don't know sort of what the NCAA started with. I mean, who knows? Maybe they're like, hey, it's a bunch of level ones and the head coach, and Florida State got it down to just level 2 and Alex Atkins. But I do know that you don't typically negotiate instead of fight if you have a whole bunch of leverage, right? So, yeah, it's basically like a plea deal. That's kind of what I got for y'all. I hope that makes sense. I do think Florida State's leadership is better than the last time they had an NCAA thing. And I'm specifically referring to the Bowden Music City Bowl music class. You guys remember that? This was 2007. The last time FSU played a bowl game that was just without most of their players. I do not know if Florida and other schools will have anything come out. Who knows? We will. We'll see. I hope this all kind of clarifies some stuff and makes sense. Yeah, I was not at that game. I know some folks in the chat certainly were. I will also point out, just to leave you all on a bit of a positive note here, I don't think Florida State has made their roster like insanely good via the portal. But again, part of the goal of this year is to be good enough to where you can still have a product that you can sell in recruiting and develop some of your younger talent on the roster. I do believe that both of those objectives are very achievable. And again, we can point out like, hey, look at Oregon, look at Ole Miss. Those teams are sort of all in for this year. Just like Florida State, I think, honestly, was very all in last year. You have to sort of survey the room and take a look and say, wait a second. Hey, this place is pretty nice. Like Charlie Park, one of our elite sponsors, Charlie Park, sister restaurant of Madison Social. Matt Thompson does such a great job. If you guys are in town, great place to have a lunch, dinner. Love the views there. Charlie Park is incredible. Make sure that you hit them up. But you got to survey the room and say, okay, look at our schedule. Look who we have coming back. Do we like our players? Do we have good leaders? Do we have good buy-in? That type of thing. But who on your schedule that you play has elite kind of all-in mantra this year? Clemson, who will probably be the league favorite, but not by a ton. They did try to do some portal stuff, and maybe they will try to do some more after the spring. But right now they have none. And I strongly disagree with the idea that Clemson has a whole bunch of guys on their roster who are just incredible and that they have no holes and don't need to portal. You could argue Miami, right? They are in year 3. It is very important for Miami to show progress this year, given the fact that they haven't been any good on the field so far. Now they've improved a little bit. They made a bowl game this year, so that was awesome. But quarterback for them has gone poorly. They really waited out the Cam Ward sweepstakes, and who knows? I believe Ward has 4 more days before he could decide to withdraw from the NFL draft. I think the 15th is the deadline, so I'll check on that. Not great, right? They have not been able to get Will Howard. I believe one of the targets might have been Seth Hennigan. He never actually ended up jumping in the portal from Memphis. Talia Tagovailoa may or may not get a waiver for a 7th year. They just took an FCS player from Albany, who I think is a good FCS quarterback, but again, like not an unbelievable FCS quarterback. And they have Brown, who I'm not a believer in. So again, I think Notre Dame is probably the team on your list that is most all in for this cycle. But I continue to look at the list and I'm like, okay, are you an underdog a couple times? Yeah, probably. Like you're probably a dog at Miami right now if you're just roster against roster. Are you an underdog at Notre Dame? Yeah, and that's probably the only one you'd be an underdog of, more than a touchdown, maybe double digits, because they look pretty good. But who knows? They also have questions on their offense. I do believe that you're going to be a really competitive football team again next year. One that, if you play well and you get the right breaks, that you can win the conference again. Are you going to be the favorite to win the conference? Probably not, depending on what else happens in the portal and what else happens with all of the other stuff. But yeah, I see some of the doom and gloom out there. Some of the questions we get on doom and gloom are absolutely insane. And I just don't agree with those, honestly. FSU isn't Ohio State to where like Ohio State is never bad, but it's close. It's hard. You have to really screw some stuff up in terms of alignment at FSU to be real bad. So cool. Yeah, buy or sell, doom and gloom. I'm selling on that. I'm just really not. Yeah, I don't know. I don't see that. So got any other stuff here? What else do we have? Wilmer asks, are we fined 1% against the entire athletic department budget, or are we fined 1% against football? That I will get some clarification on. I'm actually going to star that comment. I appreciate that. Some questions about Auburn's recruiting. Yes, but I think Auburn's got some more staff changes coming too, by the way. So we'll see just how that goes. And got some other players visiting tomorrow, I believe. I think Roydell Williams will be on campus and maybe a few other transfers. So we'll see how that goes. Again, like, is he an amazing back? No. Is he a power back who can help you out and be a valuable guy? You just got Ferguson today, big-time offensive lineman. We'll talk about him more. I got some pretty cool stat stuff that I picked up at the NCAA convention from a buddy of mine who runs a company. So I will we'll share that tomorrow. I don't know if Alex Atkins can go to Ireland but not coach. I agree. It'd be a shame to lose that vacation if you're him. So yeah. Uh, all right. Well, I will see you guys coming up and see you guys tomorrow morning. Peace. Oh, like the video.